Hi everybody, and welcome to the next tutorial. In this one we're going to be doing the background for the Miles Morales piece. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to cover a lot of different stages through this. We're going to be covering the stages that we already have with Miles, but this time in a background setting. So there's a whole different realm to it. It's crazy. But what I mean is we're going to be going through sketching, we're going to be going through inks, and then colors at the end, and detailing as well. As you can see, this is where we're at so far with Miles. The pose, the rendering, the webs, it's all done. If I hide Miles, you can see the rough guide that I wanted to have for a background. If I hide that gray, we'll just see it a bit better there. It's quite rough. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is I'll show you how to set up a perspective ruler. Okay, so I just quickly want to explain how the perspective ruler will work in Clip Studio Paint. It's a really handy tool, and this is what I use to create my backgrounds. So over here, I like to use the brush, just the normal default brush that is set in Clip Studio Paint. And here is the perspective ruler. It's actually usually hiding in, it will look like this. It'll be in the line tool, and then there's a subfolder there, or yeah, with the option for a ruler. And we want the perspective ruler. So I'm going to grab that, and then I'm going to start laying out some lines like that my lines will snap to. So I'll start with a vertical one. Let's go really quite vertical, looking down. And the reason I zoomed out is it's just easier to judge and kind of see what I want. The closer you go in, it's a little harder to judge, but this is just rough. This is just to show you how it all works. And I'll set another ruler to probably just, like a side perspective one. So that's the left vanishing point there. You can see it there, the little vanishing point. Let's do another one over here on the right. So you just click it and then hold, and I'm just dragging it out. And you can click anywhere that you think you want the next one to go. So I probably want to match it, so I'm going to just try and have mine going from there to there. So it's very similar. So now I have a left vanishing point, I have a right vanishing point, and I've also got one that goes all the way down there, and that's the third one. So now that I've got that set up, you can see over here it's on its own layer. That's the ruler. And if I hide that, it won't work. And if I make it visible, then it will work. You don't need to touch that, just as long as it's there, it's active. So the new layer on top, I'm going to use that to draw on. So I will use the brush, or the pencil that I had, just set it to black. Now another little trick is this little button here. You're going to become very familiar with that button there. As long as that's on, everything will snap to the lines like so, like that. But if it's off, nothing snaps, you see? I'm free. Everything's free. And that's actually really handy, because sometimes you're going to want to quickly just get off that ruler. So I need to have that on and active, and I'll just show you really rough. Let's make a building. So let's just have one that goes down. So if it was really big, let's just have it up here. There we go. And then you'll have that corner. So there's one, and then let's just say we had a few more lower ones just here. What if you had another one over this side and it's a little bit bigger? That kind of thing, And then you can just keep kind of sketching away and adding to it. And everything that I'm doing is snapping to the guides, which is really, really handy. And I love that. And then you can start adding all your little details in, like the rooftop thing, or you can even start drawing in windows. It's like freehand drawing, but you're actually doing buildings that are set to a perfect perspective. So yeah, that's what I wanted to quickly show you. Now let's get started. So, and this is such a good way for drawing. And as you can see, I can get my thin to thick, like if I hold it really hard. So if I lightly press and then darken it up, press really hard, we get that pressure sensitivity all the way through this. You can put a little bit more of finesse into it and really make it look like something special. So let's start. Now that I've set up my ruler, I can start sketching out some buildings. I really wanted to have one here where you can see it nice and close. So I'm just going to quickly rough out what I was thinking, and it was going to be something like this. And I really want to have, just to hold the picture together, I want to have one up there, over here, do something like this. Probably throw one in there, and maybe a nice big one up here. Let's just throw one in here. Something like this, you know, bit of a big building up the back. Maybe we'll put one in here somewhere. And as you can see, you can kind of like really start shaping things together when you get a bit of a feel for it. I've actually thrown together some references. So this is just some photos of New York City. And just go and have a look in Google, you know, and just study some backgrounds. I was really kind of drawn to this one when thinking about this piece, because I really like the angle, and you get a clear look at the top of the buildings and also the perspective coming up, which I really like. And also this one here, I like, this is one of the main ones I think I got some inspiration from when doing this picture. So what I'm going to do is, let's get this, double click, and let's just put that one there so we can check it out, and we'll just keep sketching away. So now it's coming together, I can start to see a bit of a structure of the city and how my buildings might work. I think I'm happy with that kind of setup. So now it's time to just kind of build on it and shape it a little bit more. I have to sculpt it, try and make it look a little bit more like this. I'm trying to think of, you know, things on the top of buildings, such as vents and these boxes that'll be shaped on top, and even little bits that might pop out of the side or bottom of buildings, all these different levels. The big part of Spider-Man is the city of New York. You really want to put your effort into that city as well and make it count. Otherwise, like a half-assed kind of city that might lack detail, it can also drag your picture down. So it really pays off to kind of get into that and make sure you put all the detail in, all these windows, everything like that. So, okay, and once we have the overall, all the blocks kind of laid out like this, I can now start going in and putting in a little bit more detail. Really try and structure them a bit better. At the moment it's just like a bunch of blocks. So let's try and fix that up a little bit more. And I'll just show you what I'm going to do. So what I'm thinking about now is I'm looking at my references. This is the reference that I'm mainly looking at here. So for tops of buildings, things like that. So I'm going to put that there. And now I can just, you know, get a bit more of an idea of what I'm trying to do. So I might even add like a bit of a box here. You know, just trying to think of things that could be different. I might even add it like probably here. Just roughly thinking. Let's turn it into like an aerial or a radio tower thing. And then, you know, I could start just getting rid of these parts and have it go quite high, just like this. So there's the aerial, just zoom it. Yeah, it's a bit big. It's really big actually. So I'm really glad I had that on a new layer. So I'm just gonna size that right down. I'll show you down here. I think I really want to have a water tower here. So again, I've unsnapped that and get my brush out. When I get to doing this properly, I'll be using an actual circle, so it's perfect, but let's just rough it out. And I'll probably add a bunch of smoke and steam and things like that, so it should work out all right. Snap that back on, And I'll start to put the structures underneath it. It'll probably be much taller than this. Oh no, that's probably about right. Okay, what else can we add? So I really need to kind of think about what else we can put in. Let's start putting in some rooftops. So I need to start thinking about rooftops and things. A good thing to think about here as well is let's start adding a few more details, like, you know, entrances where you would come up from a staircase and come out onto the rooftop kind of thing. So let's add a few of those things in here, and vents and things like that. Okay, so I'm happy with the shape of the buildings now. They're all put together. We've got all those little notches and, the little boxes and the, you know, I'll probably add a few more water towers and things like that. But the next step will be the windows. Let's try and fill out the windows. So there's a few different ways we can do this. You can still use the perspective grid or the perspective ruler, and maybe do something like, I'll probably definitely do it for this bit here because it's just a little bit. And what I'm thinking about here when I'm adding these extra little lines next to it, it's kind of because it's beveled in. So I want to have the cement part that's out, and then the window is kind of in a little bit further. So we're just having that little dip in, and you'll see what I mean when I'm done. And I'm actually going to do an extra layer when I do the horizontal one. So if I was going to go like this, and remember it can stay quite rough, you know, and then what I would do, just to clean it up a little bit, we're going to select those little bits with the marquee lasso and just delete. Yeah, so yeah, you can do it that way, or, so on my references here, I've just had a quick look, especially here, I'm just looking at the windows and how they are. So when I zoom in, you can see what I mean about windows are kind of beveled in a little bit more. So they're kind of, the wall is risen out, the windows are kind of tucked in a little bit more. So you get that kind of 3D little what do you call it, level that goes in. So I'll be trying to achieve that as well with each window. And every building has kind of different types of windows, so I'm just kind of keeping that in mind as well. So I found some flat looking window options here. So let's look at this. So I'm going to grab all of this section. I'm in Photoshop, by the way, and I'm just going to lighten it up, probably just the highlights. Paste this into Illustrator. Doesn't need to be that big. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the opacity down quite a bit on this layer, and I'll use it as a guide. So let's just go up to these windows and we'll just make a few square, like rectangles. Take the stroke down a bit. And then let's get another rectangle down here, and we'll try and do that little ledge. All right, we'll work with that for now. So I'm going to grab that, and then I'm going to expand it all so it makes the whole stroke just one thing. Combine that. There we go. Okay, now let's try and copy it across. Hold two of them, and then bring them down to here. And then I'll press Ctrl D, and we can do that a couple more times. I'm going to get all them. Now I'm going to go across, copy that gap. Now I can do it again, Ctrl D. And now that we have the full set now, so I will copy that, paste, and pixels are fine. Just call this Windows. And I'm going to duplicate it and hide the original so that I have a backup. So let's just have a look. So if I go Ctrl T for transform, now let's put it down here somewhere. Now it's very, very easy to lay these out. All you have to do is match your perspective. So I'm trying to look at my building here, and I'm just matching that. I'm holding control as I'm grabbing each little nodule on the ends. So holding control and then holding these, you're actually able to do that. And then if you hold control on this one and shift, it'll snap to that line. It takes a bit of practice, but yes, I want to try and control and shift so I can get that same perspective. I'm looking at this here, so I'm kind of looking at that and matching it. So now it's exact. It's exactly the right shape, and I made it so it hugs to the edge, so it's easier for me to judge. You can see here this line isn't right, so down a bit more. There we go. Now it's right. So now that that's set to each corner and it is exactly the right perspective, I can hold shift and move each edge in. Actually, you don't even have to hold shift. So now I'm just trying to look at the edges. I want to make sure there's a bit of a cement edge for each side of the building. I think that's it. Boom. So get rid of that now. There we have it. So that's a way to lay out windows, and I think that works really well. It's a good time saver. So I'll lay out another version. So I'm going to copy this backup version again. Start doing the same thing. Free transform. There we go. Now if I go down here, it's okay to stretch it down. It's not going to stay like that, just so I can get this angle right. Now one thing to keep in mind here, I need to make sure that these windows line up and match each other, because you have to think of them as floors. So there you go, one building is done. One thing I didn't keep in mind is the windows here that are going to keep going. So I'm just going to duplicate this one down, and all I want is these couple here. There you go, you can see I've just kept them ones there, just for that extra little bit down the side. There we go, merge all those. But what we need to do now is, I'm going to lay out all the windows of every building. So let's do some more. So I'm actually just looking at an old background picture that I've done before for Marvel. And I don't know, I just like to look back at these. I want to kind of copy that one there, I think, for the this big building here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just lay out a rectangle all the way down to the bottom with a nice shape, probably like that. Yep, nice and tall. And I'm just going to make sure, yep, it's just the stroke, so that's good. Alright, so I'm happy with that. What I'll do is I'm actually going to merge that right now, so expand, and then I'm going to select this one and get rid of that chunk out of the side there. And then I'll just duplicate that. Okay, so select all, expand, and merge. So now I have that part of the building which I wanted. So slide that across. How much gap do we have? There we go. Duplicate, grab them all, copy, back to Photoshop, paste. Yep, and then I'm going to free transform again. This is the fun part. Match that angle. You're allowed to, you can easily just bring it out there if you need to match angles another way. Okay, that's fine. So now I can bring that down to wherever it can't be seen anymore, that building. And then I'm going to give it some space on top. So I'm going to use that. I'm happy with that now. And then just get rid of all those extra bits that I don't want anymore. And I can recycle these for another building somewhere if I like. Now I can start shaping it onto the other side of this building. So there you go, there's that building and that building, they're done. So to save you a lot of time, I'm going to go through and just fill out a lot of the rest. I'm going to do all the other windows now because it's very boring, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. Okay, so I've laid out all of the windows now. Took a long time, but I got there in the end. So you can see now they're all laid out, thrown them all in, and basically that was just using the perspective free transform kind of thing. So if I just look over here at Illustrator, where I created all these different types of windows, so you can see here I had like an example in the back of something that I found online, and I'll just make some windows, duplicate it, copy it over as I already mentioned, and then we just free transform it and fit it to the side of the building. So here's another different kind of window, and then I've got these kind of windows, these kind of windows. I made all different types, so it's a good way to do it. See how I can add all these details in here. Can you imagine doing that by hand with the perspective grid in Clip Studio? It would take forever. So this is definitely a lot handier. And these kind of ones, I've made these and more, as you can see. Even just some lines here for some distant ones, quite simple. This one was a bit more intricate for closer buildings that are going to be seen a little bit closer. And then stuff like this, yeah. So there you go, and that's how I do that. So it's a good guide for you, and hopefully that helps when you want to do your own background sometime. Alright, so the next step is, now that all the windows are done, I need to get my rough layer, and I'm going to take the opacity down. I'm just going to hide that post for a little bit. I'm going to keep the windows in. I think they're a good guide for me, but yeah, I'm taking that down probably a fair bit so I can really start doing the outlines. And I'll put the outlines layer above everything. So outlines, I'll be using a pen. So I like to use this at a nice size with just black on the G Pen, and that's just the set defaults. Here's all these stats in here, I think, and yeah, that's just all the default stuff. So yeah, basically now I'm just going to go and look at the roughs and try and just neaten it up a little bit. So as I'm going, I'm just making sure that I press quite hard. I really want to get some bold lines, because once it's zoomed out, you know, it's quite distant really, and once Miles is in there, I'm just kind of looking at his lines as well compared to the background one. Yeah, I'm happy with that kind of thickness. So now that I know what kind of thickness I'm going to go for, I can just go absolutely nuts and just keep going through, trying to match that, you know, I want to make sure it's all the same. Another thing I should probably mention as well, I really only like to have the thickness on the outside of every building, so it's kind of just all held together. But then as I go on these inner bits, I'll show you, I probably wouldn't go like that thick. I'd probably go more like something like that, just so it's a little bit neater on the inside, not too bold and messy like that. So like I said, so just like this and across, and then as I'm on the outside, it'd be way thicker like that, and then down here a bit thicker. So now I'm kind of relying on my perspective grid now. We're going to just kind of trust that, and I need to just go through and just make sure that I'm happy with all these outlines. We've got a good guide here. I've got my roughs, they're all laid out. So it's really quite simple from here with the outlines. So I'm just going to jump ahead and do all of these, and then we'll get straight into the coloring. And that's it for today's tutorial. This is just part 1 of the background. So next week we'll get into part 2, which will be the final part of the background, which will include colouring and all of the details and the snow and the weather and all of that good stuff. And then we can finalise this picture and it'll be all complete. So thanks for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next week.